everybody. I'm up here at SL Math, which is a mathematical research center outside of the campus of UC Berkeley. And while I'm here, I wanted to show you my favorite part of the SL Math campus, which is this beautiful sculpture. This sculpture is called the Eightfold Way, and it represents one of my favorite mathematical gems called the Klein Quartic. It was made in 1993 by a sculptor by the name of Helaman Ferguson, under the direction of Bill Thurston, who was the director of the Math Institute at that time. And Bill has a really nice article about the sculpture at the time of its inauguration. So the Klein Quartic is the maximally symmetric genus 3 surface. So it's a surface with 3 donut holes, and it has the most amount of symmetries possible. And the Klein Quartic is an example of a beautiful theorem by Hurwitz, which says that a surface with genus G bigger than or equal to 2 has at most 84 times G minus 1 symmetries. And the Klein Quartic has exactly this number. And this is really exciting because for surfaces like the sphere or like the one-hole torus, we can have geometries on these surfaces that have infinitely many symmetries. But it's really special that for a hyperbolic surface, for a surface with genus bigger than or equal to 2, we can only have finitely many symmetries, and this is bounded by this number 84 times G minus 1. So I told you that the Klein Quartic has the most amount of symmetries for a genus 3 surface, and that would give us 84 times 2, which is 168 symmetries. So you might be looking at this shape and you wonder, how can this be a genus 3 surface? That doesn't make any sense. It looks like this weird tetrahedron statue. It's got all these holes in different places. Well, if you allow this surface to be made out of Play-Doh and you allow yourself to stretch and squish it via a homotopy, you could press down the top of the sculpture and you would end up with something with 3 donut holes. So that explains why it's genus 3, but how can we see the symmetries in this shape? Well, we have a very particular embedding of this shape in 3 dimensions, and it has some nice tetrahedral symmetry. The surface kind of goes along as a tubular neighborhood of the tetrahedron, and in fact, this doesn't give us all of the symmetries of the Klein Quartic, unfortunately. So there is a subgroup of the symmetry group of the Klein Quartic, which is the tetrahedral symmetry group. And those symmetries are realized by the way that the shape is put into space. So for example, I have an order 3 rotation around this vertex. I have an order 2 rotation around this edge, and those would be symmetries of the Klein Quartic. But there are more symmetries of the Klein Quartic than exhibited in this embedding, and that's demonstrated by the tiling by these irregular regions. And all of these regions have 7 sides, so we would like to think about them abstractly as hyperbolic heptagons. We're going to look at this region to see that it has 7 sides. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Brings us back home. Okay. And there are 24 regions with 7 sides on this shape. And so there's 24 heptagons that make up the tiling of the Klein Quartic. And the group of symmetries can take any heptagon to any other heptagon. So it acts transitively on the tiling by heptagons. But also any 1/7 rotation around the center of a heptagon will also be a symmetry of the Klein Quartic. And so that gives us 24 times 7, which is 168 symmetries, and that's all of the symmetries of the Klein Quartic. This division into the heptagon regions really encodes all the symmetries. So at the bottom of this statue, we have a disk which is tiled with hyperbolic heptagons with the Klein model of the hyperbolic plane. So you might be wondering why the sculpture is called the Eightfold Way. Well, it has to do with these paths that traverse the edges of the tiling by heptagons. And the paths are alternatively turned left and right. So if I were to start at any vertex of the tiling and I start moving along an edge. And I choose, for instance, at this vertex, I'm going to choose to go down the left edge. And then at the next intersection, I'm going to take a right turn. And then at the next intersection, I'm going to take a left turn. And then I'm going to take a right turn. And then I'm going to take a left turn. We get to the inside. And then I'm going to take a right turn. And then I'm going to take a left turn. And then I'm going to take a right turn, and I'm back to where I was. If I start at any vertex and start moving along the edges, turning left and right, alternating, then I will take a walk that is of length 8. So I'll take a walk along 8 of the edges before I return back to the vertex that I started with. And so there are these paths of length 8 that turn one way and the other along the surface of this shape. And if you count up the number of edges, every edge is contained in 2 of these paths, and that will give us 21 paths on the surface of the shape. In some ways, the Klein Quartic is a little bit analogous to the Platonic solids. So the Klein Quartic is exhibited by this highly regular tiling on a genus 3 surface. And in the same way, I could take a sphere and do a highly regular tiling on a sphere, and that would be one of the Platonic solids. So the Klein Quartic is constructed with these 7-sided shapes meeting 3 to a vertex. An analogous shape would be a dodecahedron that's formed by pentagons meeting 3 to a vertex. And if you did this same process on the dodecahedron of starting at a vertex and turning left and then right and left and right, you would get something that looks like an equator of the dodecahedron. So those 8-fold paths are in some ways equators of this genus 3 surface, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but that's how it works. So I really love the Klein Quartic, and I think it's because it does have so many symmetries. It's in some ways similar to these Platonic solids that I fell in love with from a young age. But I also really love the Klein Quartic because there's a lot of ways that we can express those symmetries. We can think about them in terms of tiling. We can also think about them geometrically, as this is a genus 3 surface that has some specific hyperbolic metric that gives us those symmetries. We can also think about it algebraically because we can express the Klein Quartic as an algebraic curve, which is where the name comes from. Klein Quartic. Quartic is a degree 4 equation, and a degree 4 equation will give you back this surface. So I really like the way that you can view the Klein Quartic from lots of different viewpoints, and they all give you the same shape that is just so symmetric. So if you ever happen to be in the Bay Area, I would encourage you to take a little venture up to the hill next to UC Berkeley and come and check out the sculpture for yourself. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed learning about the Klein Quartic, I want to tell you I have 2 more videos coming out about this topic. The first is going to be more of a math explanation about this shape and about the Hurwitz theorem. And the second will be a craft video where you can learn how to make your own paper model of the Klein Quartic. So you can look forward to those, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.